and I want to thank the Google team for joining us. I'm going to exit stage left or right, and going to leave it to these guys as soon as they're ready to go, which it looks like you guys are. So, Ryan, I'm going to let you guys say hello and leave it to you guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Kent. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Ton of great nuggets in that last session. Really appreciated that session. The most surprising nugget is Kent's love for Sears shoes. Appreciate that. Great. Well, we're going to just dive right in. I'm going to get started with a question to kick things off. So how many of you are currently selling internationally or plan to in the next 12 months? Like, raise your hands high. Okay. Of those folks, how many are like using performance media right now to drive in those countries? So a lot fewer hands.
Fewer, yeah.
But definitely a lot fewer. And so, kind of where we're level setting here is this is a survey from earlier. And so it was really neat to see a large proportion of the audience raise their hand and saying that they are or planning to sell. So this is a survey from ShipBob earlier this year from about 350 executives. 56% of the brands said that they are planning to ship or fulfill orders in new countries this year, which I think is, a testament to the expansion mindset that a lot of the retailers have. And a lot of the conversations that we're having with our clients are saying, hey, we have this, we're already established in the US, we're looking for incremental opportunities to expand. And so when we think about those opportunities, right, and some of this data set, I've seen a couple of the presentations today, so I don't want to belabor it, right? When you look at the scale of opportunity, obviously China's number one from an e-commerce revenue in as far as dollars this year. United States number two. But when you look down that list and you think about the opportunities, you see things like the United Kingdom and you see things like Canada, and you realize, well, obviously two of the three kind of big English-speaking countries, right, from an opportunity perspective. And so a lot of times the conversation we have is if you think about it and you're ignoring the United Kingdom and you're willing to think outside the US, you're kind of cutting off the economy the size of California, right? And so when would you ever not want to advertise to the entire state of California, right? From a scale perspective. When we look at the overall e-commerce strength, some of the other things that we see, you see the U.S. here as e-commerce as a percentage of overall retail, right? You see some countries that are much stronger share. The one thing that kind of stuck out to me is the United Kingdom having over a third of their overall retail spend coming through e-commerce, which presents, again, another key opportunity to be able to connect with that audience. And last but not least, wanted to touch on kind of from a top 10 countries ranked by overall e-commerce growth. We've kind of benchmarked the United States down there around 16%, which I know we saw some of these stats earlier. Philippines, Indonesia, India, and Brazil all over 20%. So there are these opportunities to kind of look and say, where are the markets that my customers most align with, and how can I make sure that I'm getting in front of them? And so that question is how do you find your customers in a crowd, right? And so Kevin and I are going to talk today about that specifically from a performance marketing lens and how you think about getting in front of those people. So the three key areas we're going to focus on. One, we're going to talk about strategies and tools. So how do you think about identifying, prioritizing that opportunity a little bit for you, whether you're already in markets and want to expand or if you want to get net new outside of the US. Kevin's going to talk about some available tools. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the ad types and tactics, and then we're also going to share kind of some tips for driving success and actually walk through a case study using a model that Kevin will share. So as a way of a quick introduction I head up the strategy team for Adlucent. We're a performance marketing agency, been around for 20 years. I know some of our clients are in the audience. We're a Google Premier partner. We're Google's largest shopping ads agency by spend under management. And importantly, we're one of a handpicked group of international growth agency partners that works with Google on helping brands find their customers outside of the US. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Kevin.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue, and it's the reason we're on stage here together today. Do you want to say anything else about this?
Nope, didn't know it was there.
There you go. All right. So again, I'm Kevin Perry. I'm the head of our International Growth Agency program at Google. Delighted to be on stage with Ryan today. And the program that I run here is, the vision is all about creating more global brands and helping accelerate your international growth. We do that by developing strategies, insights, and tools that we share both directly with retailers and consumers on sites like Think with Google and through top agency partners like Adlucent. It's all about enabling and building the ecosystem, and so many of you in the audience today are already global, which is great to see. But I'm going to dive into some of the strategies and tools that we have to share, and I always start this section by asking the question, why international? Now look, we're at a conference with global in the title. I'm sure everyone in this room has had to answer this question at some time or other. We're not saying that international should be your business's only priority, right? But it should be a key pillar. And in part because we have case studies we'll go through that really show that international investment can drive incremental revenue. It can also future-proof your business. I don't have to tell you this. We've heard story after story today about how diversifying your markets can really actually protect you against uncertainty and help you build your brand. And that third part about building brand love, it's one of the key parts that we talk about with a paid media strategy overall. You have to think about kind of building your brand awareness, especially as you're entering new markets. And yes, I know when you hear Google, you'd probably think I'm only going to talk about marketing objectives. The truth of the matter is we know that going global and being successful is all about your comprehensive business objectives. And so a lot of the strategies and tools we'll talk about today actually include things like recommendations on payments, on logistics, on thinking about consumer behaviors in a specific market. So I won't spend time on this. I think everyone in this audience has really probably moved towards the incremental export side of this. You're already in multiple markets. You've thought about footprint expansion. You've tried different markets, maybe tested and pulled back. But the key thing here is that export isn't linear, right? It's cyclical. You always want to be improving. And there are a lot of insights that can help. There are also tools that might leverage machine learning or automation that can give you recommendations about how to improve or prioritize new markets as, say, markets have emerging demand or something comes up. And I'll share this framework. You've seen many other frameworks today as well, but I'll just go through some of the key tips that we've learned with conversations with thousands of retailers globally about their global expansion journeys. You know, the first thing here on this RAPID acronym would be readiness. And what I mean by that, again, to this point, it's not about one division or doing this in a silo. Think about your entire organization and all of your capabilities. Pull in your agency partners and ask them about their ability to help support you. Pull in your payments and logistics providers, the platforms that you use. Do a comprehensive analysis here about your readiness. And then next is about analyzing your opportunities. This is all about the data and insights you need to prioritize markets. There's actually a tool, Market Finder, that I'll talk about and show some slides for later that gives a lot of both Google data and third-party data. When your teams ask you, okay, well, why prioritize this market over the other? It's a great place to go that has all of those data points ready for you. You can pull them, put them into your presentations. I think someone just talked about stealing some slides for a future kind of business review. When I say pitch here, this is really about how you position yourself with consumers. And the key point here is that consumer values and objectives are so different market to market. Something like Hofstede's cultural dimensions is a great way to understand consumers in different markets and the messaging that would fit best for reaching those consumers. And identify, so many of you have talked about different challenges with payments, with checkout, with conversion rates, with shipping. I haven't heard as much around customer service, customer support, and how you might do self-serve channels, but that's a key part of this as well. All of those challenges, if you can identify them up front, you're going to be better prepared for what's to come. It's just a fact. You're going to run into challenges when you're going to new markets. And the last thing I'd say is about driving success, right? When you find something that works, lean into it. There's a lot we can do here, and actually I'll use this to switch to the next slide, to talk about prioritizing markets that may have similar characteristics. This, we've seen a lot of different examples today of kind of strategies or export roadmaps. This is one that I see often. It is very basic in terms of the data and insights. It looks at GDP or overall market size. And then a few other things like language, right? And typically the language that you would approach the majority of customers in a market by what they would speak. So many of us who are US-based retailers might try Canada, the UK, and Australia first. They're all English-speaking markets, large economies. That's not to say there aren't seasonality considerations or localization considerations. In the UK, you're not selling sweaters and sneakers. You're selling jumpers and trainers. In Australia, they're going to know you're not local if you're advertising heavy coats in December. So there are a lot of things to think about here, but it's a great lower barrier to entry. Then you might move to Germany, France, and Japan, non-English speaking markets, great test markets. You can move to a footprint expansion from there. And maybe look at, we have Mexico, Brazil, and India called out here. We've heard lots of other countries as well, maybe with smaller overall economy, but really good trending demand for your category. And what I would say is that's just one example. We have a lot of tools that can actually help pull the data or insights for you that you might use across this entire prioritization process. So the first I mentioned is Market Finder, and that actually parses your category. If you just input your website, it can tell you, okay, here are the categories, and here's what markets we might suggest. I mentioned it's both Google data, like cost per click, average cost per click, as well as third-party data that's surfaced there. Shopping insights are available to you in the ads interface or in your Google Merchant Center. This is amazing insights, including some demand forecasting by category that can be really helpful for you. Google Trends, similarly, you can look up user search behavior by keyword, and you can split that down by market, meaning you can search for how many people on a seasonal basis are looking for backpacks in Japan or beauty products in Germany. And the last about Find My Audience, I shared this quickly, but I'd say brand awareness is so important, especially what we call upper funnel. And with a tool like Find My Audience, you can actually learn about audiences that are most engaged with your content on sites like YouTube. You can understand what else they do from a secondary interests, right? Secondary affinity interests. And you can also see top YouTube channels that they would be likely to watch. These are all great tools available to you. And I said I'd wrap with a few other slides from Market Finder. What I would stress here is there are so many insights. What I love about these tools is that they pull in data and make some recommendations for you. Automation and leaning into algorithms and machine learning is a key part of what makes this successful. There's also a lot of knowledge in there about operational guides and go-to-market guides that can help you learn the pitfalls of new markets. But the key point around automation is also something we're building into ad types. And I'm going to hand it back over to Ryan for the next section to talk a little bit more about some of those ad types.
Yep. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, and I think even from the shopper insights perspective and the trends perspective, even domestically, those are two underused tools that really give you insights into how people are behaving. People are raising their hand, going to Google, and looking for something, and you're able to actually see what's happening from a consumer lens, which is really what we need to be thinking about. It's not about the products you're trying to sell, but what are the consumers looking for?
It's a great point.
Yep. And so you talked about automation. One of the key ad types, right, is Performance Max. A lot of us are running that domestically probably as well. This is an opportunity to reach customers really across the funnel, internationally as well. So Performance Max is it's one campaign that includes shopping, search, display, YouTube, right, Gmail ads. So it's kind of all the touch points kind of across the Google ecosystem. And it works really well. And the reason I have the ability to stand up here and say this is I'm working for an agency and I've worked for agencies in the past with their own proprietary bid tech who really doubted Google's algorithms for a long time and said, we can do it better, we can do it better. And ultimately what we found with Performance Max is they can do a better job of helping us find the right customers for our clients, domestically and internationally. And the reason this is a great way, because so few of you raised your hands from a performance marketing perspective, to step into performance marketing in these countries, Performance Max allows you to reach not only bottom of the funnel people on the results page raising their hand for something, but also because Performance Max's algorithms are path to purchase aware, they can find these consumers on YouTube, on display, on Discover, on other platforms, right? So you have this opportunity to use that data because no agency or no individual advertiser can understand as much about your consumers in a given country, in a given region, that Google can, because they have those multiple touch points to pull together. And so by using Performance Max and building the right structure to align with, and we'll talk about this in the case study a little bit, to align with the consumers you want to reach, provide the right audience signals, and then provide the right conversion information, you're really able to drive success. And so when you look at what this looks like kind of across the landscape, right? You have one campaign. You might be advertising one, product or product category, but you're able to reach someone who's on YouTube. You're looking at Gmail and connecting with ads and reach them on display. And so you get the idea here, right? You're able to kind of reach an individual across the funnel, or you can reach multiple people across that funnel set. But the important thing to think about is that is not the only thing, right? So when you think about, and this is true both domestically and internationally, is Performance Max is a tool in the toolbox of the Google ecosystem, right? At the end of the day, those YouTube and Discover and display ads within Performance Max are still going to be very much geared towards the bottom of the funnel. You still need to make sure that you have campaigns on video campaigns, display campaigns that are helping to drive people further down the funnel. Because at the end of the day, people from the Performance Max lens, you're still trying to identify customers who have kind of self-identified in some way. Like Google has seen behavior that says they are tending towards your products or services, right? And so that's how Performance Max helps identify them. But if you want to reach a net new audience, find a net new customer base, maybe a different demographic, you really have to use something like YouTube and display and have creative that better aligns with those consumers further up the funnel to kind of change their, to push them further down the funnel. Does that all make sense? Any questions? Because I could talk about Performance Max for days. So what I wanted to do next is kind of walk through a case study using the rapid kind of model that Kevin had set forth here, right? So kind of talking about how we've worked with a client to kind of reach out and expand internationally. So this is a Fortune 500 retailer that we work with, multi-channel. When we talk about kind of that readiness stage, they're a US-based company with a few brands, but they had operations on the ground. They had stores in a couple countries through acquisitions, brought them together, right? So the readiness phase was really kind of assessed internally, and they said, hey, we've got these stores. We really need to move towards e-commerce, right? We want to outside of the U.S. And so that's when we kind of got involved, right? Understanding which brands were the right brands to lead with, what countries you want to think about going into, and how to pair those things together. We even stepped in and helped with some of the insights from the tools, right? Understanding what products made sense for which countries, right? So when you think about a brand who has hundreds of thousands of SKUs, we see a range from 10% to 50% of the SKUs that are sold in the U.S. being sold in these different countries, right? You have to consider all the logistics behind it, right? If it's too large to ship, if the costs, if it's going to be too long to get there. A lot of the folks have talked about this throughout the day. Being very selective and really understanding the audience and making sure you're tailoring your products to those consumers and those countries. And so for this, when we launched international 3 years ago. Like I said, we started with one website, one brand, one country. We expanded to all of the kind of the English-speaking countries pretty rapidly and started adding additional brands. When you think about the ad products that we used, at that point 3 years ago, it was testing the automated campaigns for T-ROAS. We moved to Smart Shopping, and we're in the process of moving over to Performance Max, right? Because you're able to reach so many more customers. One of the important things to think about from an ad perspective, it's not just a lift and shift from the U.S. to another country, right? You can't copy and paste. You really need to think about simplifying your ad structure as you move into a new country. This does a couple of things. One, you probably, if you haven't been advertising outside of if you haven't been advertising in that country, you don't really know how the consumers will react and engage, right? And you want to try and keep the data as much together. You probably have a larger data set here in the United States, which allows the algorithms, you can actually segment the data more and still have enough data for the algorithms to understand. When you move overseas or international, you want to make sure that you consolidate and have a smaller campaign set so that you can help to the algorithms to understand who you should be reaching, what the right type of conversions are for you and for your business, right? And so when we look at the areas that we're looking to kind of identify some of the challenges, right? One of the things that you always find is that you have to be patient in how you're expanding. You know, our experience was we ran into some shipping challenges early, right? And that's why we launched in one place. You know, the other challenge, and I was actually just talking to someone before we walked in here, or about a half hour before we walked in here, talking about currency challenges they're having. There are so many data points that have to align between your partners, your website, Google, the product data itself, and so making sure that you're consistently delivering a currency experience that the consumers can understand. Otherwise, it's a poor consumer experience, but it's also a poor experience from the ad perspective, right? Trying to make sure that those things are all aligned. The other challenge we ran into is some unexpected regulations and behavior, right? So even though these are all English-speaking countries, you think about some of the countries and provinces like Quebec that requires different languages even within the country, right? And so what are those subtle distinctions and variations? Even something as small as you know, time zones, making sure that you're setting everything aligned with where you're trying to sell as opposed to where you're selling or shipping from, right? And then from how you iterate on this, as Kevin said, this is not a set it and forget it. This is a multi-step process that you're kind of, every time you want to go through and expand to an additional country, you want to work back through this. So we started 3 years ago piloting with one brand in one country. You know, we wanted to make sure that we were not, the client wanted to make sure that they were not exceeding their own logistics capabilities and that they were focused on ensuring that their domestic experience was strong and they were able to add incremental opportunity. So the most recent country site launch, so the program they decided to do is actually launch a specific site per country as opposed to having you know, some sort of smart detection and change to the US site, right? So there's actually distinct sites for each country. The most recent one launched this year, so there's still, even with some of the economic certainty and changes that we're seeing this year, we're still seeing them lean into international expansion. And so the next step for us is to kind of understand what the next expansion step is. We've really kind of capitalized on all the English or English as a secondary language countries. You know, where is the next opportunity for us to help them to expand? And so the results that we've delivered in the past 12 months, we actually have seen $15 million in incremental revenue that wouldn't have happened just here from a domestic standpoint. I think one of the important points, and I think we've, in side conversations, I've had this, I've talked to people about this a little bit. We've actually have an overall 30% greater return on ad spend in our international portfolio program than we do in the United States, right? So that probably means a couple of things. One, there's probably an opportunity to incrementally optimize and help to capture more new customers into the program at the same efficiency that we'd expect. There's also, you know, we've seen about a 60% lower cost per click. And so again, it just kind of highlights that incremental opportunity to be able to capture new customers at a really efficient pace when you look outside.
And I think that's a great callback to the Market Finder data that actually surfaces average cost per click. Obviously, agencies and others would have better data on some of this, but there is public information out there for you. And I think these are great testaments to the fact that, you know, it's incremental revenue and it can be more cost effective, more efficient as well.
Yep, exactly. And so with that, I think we wanted to open it up to some questions. If anybody has any questions of us, of Google. So many questions, yeah. So maybe start in the back here and then we've got someone up front.
Great.
For the $15 million in incremental revenue, do you know what percentage that represents?
For the entire business?
Yeah.
I believe it's somewhere in the 5 to 10 range percent.
Okay, thanks.
I was wondering if you had any suggestions on when you have franchise partners operating your sites locally. I know we talked earlier, but it is one of our big challenges that as a host brand, we have lots of economy of scale, then we've got multiple partners around the world running their own ads.
I can start.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think there are some things that can be really interesting to do there, like taking just back to that readiness piece, doing an assessment. We've talked with retailers where the functionality with these different host partners or the third parties who are hosting your site, like your functionality is so different market to market. And if you can just paint that picture, obviously that doesn't get anyone to say like, oh, I'll change this tomorrow, but you can at least call out like our customer experience is so different on your site than it is on these other countries. It's not a data point that they would be going out and seeking, right? If their only focus is on that one market. Obviously, that's not going to get them to say, oh, I'll onboard a new payments partner or I'll change our shipping options overnight. But I do think just that analysis piece can help to show some of the differences. Maybe a second tip would be on like asking about account hygiene. If they're running marketing campaigns, asking them to just do a scrub through of what's actually working, what's not.
Yeah, and I think we touched on this kind of in our conversation. You know, the couple things that I had in mind was, you know, can you think of a template that works regionally, right? Can you kind of bucket countries together and say this is a template that should work for this country, and kind of you're kind of hand delivering that in a playbook to the groups to say kind of just follow this template, follow this playbook, right? And this is kind of just to make it a little bit more turnkey from that perspective. I think the other thing I would think about if it's an opportunity is worked with partners in the past that kind of brought back some of those fees from a media perspective in kind of franchisee or license fees and said, okay, in you doing this and giving me 2% more, I'm actually going to take that and I'm going to double it, or I'm going to add 50% more, and I'm going to put that back in your market and ensure it's coming to your region. And then, you know, a partner would then manage that for you. You manage it in-house and you say, you know, hey, we're delivering this back and this is what you're getting for those dollars. If you want to add something to that, that's fine, but you don't use the brand and don't, you know, that's going to be a different, you know, handled a little different way. So it gives you a little bit more consistency and a little bit more structure over the brand component. Those are the couple of things that I've seen work in the past. I'll give you mine if you want.
So speaking of the brand, how do you, with both the tools that you're both working with, how do you manage the brands that are a little more, that have a very strong brand police, we'll put it to you that way?
Can you pull that thread a little bit?
Sure. So especially when you're looking at ads that are more less defined as to where they're showing up on pages, what the neighborhood is on the page that they're on, those types of things. How can you affect that both from the tools to understand the market and on the delivery side?
So probably thinking kind of like the context where your ads are showing up and some of that control. Yeah. And so, you know, we'll go through, and there are reports that can actually provide some placement guidance, and you can actually look at some efficiency depending on the type of campaigns that you're running. You can get that at different levels of detail. I know that for some of the work that some of the ads campaigns, excuse me, that we'll run, we'll look and see are there certain placements or placement types that have less efficiency. Is there a way to exclude those, right? From a display specific perspective and YouTube perspective, you have a lot of controls over the context and kind of you can blacklist sites, you can blacklist content ideas and things like that to make sure it's not that those things aren't being seen. I don't know if you had any other.
And the only thing that I would say is pretty basic. It's just check out the Google Help Center articles if you want around some of this. And actually a lot of those Help Center articles will break down by country so you can see nuances if they are there. Same for, say, here's another tip that I love. Same for, say, the payment methods that Google would accept for its own products. There are great Help Center articles that show, just as another proxy of like, well, what payment methods are we supporting versus what payment methods would somebody else be supporting? That's a great little tip from my old days in payment processing, which I didn't talk about before this. But
That's good. Any last questions? All right, getting the wrap-up signal.
Right. Thank you guys so much. That was wonderful. Thank you guys.
Thank you.